So the Ontario Women's Intercollegiate Football Association is a not-for-profit competitive women's flag football league for universities and colleges here in Ontario, Canada. And essentially, we are a student athlete run initiative for women by women. So unfortunately, women's flag football in Ontario isn't to the level of recognition of varsity status just yet, and we're working on that. So this association is essentially that voice and advocacy group to keep women's flag football an opportunity here in Ontario. And so since we started back in 2017, this past season, we had over 400 athletes and over 70 coaches who participated in our league, which is amazing. And this is why we're so excited to bring more career development opportunities for all of you, especially in lieu of not having a season this year. So to introduce myself, I'm a PhD student here, not here for everyone, but in London, Ontario, Canada at Western University. And I oversee the league as the commissioner, and I have the luxury of working with amazing people like Emily to keep this going. So a lot of our OIFA exec are here as well. And we are really just trying to make the experience as top-notch for our athletes and coaches as possible. And now I'll pass it back to Emily to take over from there.
With that being said, we're officially kicking off our Women in Football Careers Weekend. So I'm going to toss it over to Olivia to start off with some quick rapid fire questions before we get into our panelist intros.
Okay, so to do this, we are going to open it up so that everyone else can respond as well. How this will work for our panelists, please use the reactions at the bottom of your screen to give us a yay or a nay, a yes or no, a thumbs up if you want as well. Some of the questions you may not be able to answer depending on what your field prefers. So we're cognizant of that. So if you can't answer, just give us like the surprised reaction in response. Okay, so I'm going to open up the poll. And then we'll get started with asking these questions. All right, so everyone else should be able to now see the poll in front of them. But we're gonna ask the panelists directly. So our first question, is this true? I would rather watch a football game in person than on a TV. Yeah. Yeah, you can react, you could just say yes, we can go with that too. Was your journey to your career easy?
No.
Yeah. Some thumbs up, some no's. Okay. Was there ever a time you felt lost during your career path?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah.
Day.
For sure. Was there ever a moment where you felt like you had to prove yourself to others, especially in your field? Oh yeah. Okay. Nice. Was football always your go-to sport? Oh, good. Nice. Some transition into football, especially from our league. A lot of our athletes are from other sports, so it's nice to see that. Yes or no, team offense over team defense?
Ooh. You know, I covered the Bucs this year, and I'm gonna say defense.
Yeah, that's a fair answer. They're deep.
I'm gonna agree with that because I cover the Bills, so.
I don't know, y'all. I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan. I love all 32 teams, obviously, since they were for the NFL Network. But Patrick Mahomes, come on.
Yeah, I mean,
What's not to love?
Exactly.
Okay, so this one might be a touchy one. Have you ever been mansplained before when it came to a topic in your field?
yes.
Every day.
Earlier today.
Oh, there we go. We have one today. Second last question, yes or no, chips over chocolate for a go-to Super Bowl snack?
Yeah.
Ooh, Super Bowl, for the Super Bowl, yes.
Chips, yeah, going the salty route.
Yeah, on like a regular day, I would say chocolate.
For sure, on the daily. Do you believe that Tom Brady is the GOAT?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I can't even argue with that anymore.
No comments as well. Okay.
I'm not commenting.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so that was just our little rapid fire round, loosen things up. I'm gonna end our poll. So if anyone didn't get their response in, do that now. And then I'll share it with everyone so we can take a peek. So I just really like this as a way for everyone to kind of get an idea of what people are into. Watching football in person looks like to be the way to go for most attending today. So a lot are actually worried about it being too difficult to get into a career in football. So that's something to keep in mind. And hopefully through your insight, we'll get a little perspective on how to either overcome obstacles or find a way to make it easier for others. Many are unsure about their career path, which is totally fair, especially during these times. Things are changing. Football was not the go-to sport for many of those in our audience. So that's interesting to see. A lot of offense fans here, and everyone's been mansplained. Love it. And then a lot of Chip fans and a lot of goats, Tom Brady fans. So I'll pass it on to Emily to kick it off with our questions directly to our panelists.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks for that, Olivia. I hope you guys all enjoyed that. That was something that I found that was a little bit fun. So I'm just going to go actually just in the order that my screen is in. So I'm going to ask Diandra first, if you would like to introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about how you got to the position that you are in today.
Yeah, so my name's Diandra, and I work for Sports Illustrated. I covered the Bucks this year, and then I have a series called The Women in the NFL, and that's kind of been like my passion project this year. How I started, do you want me to talk about how I started out kind of?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, so I always wanted to work in football. That was my goal. I did start out with kind of an interesting path. I actually majored in political science and journalism. So I started as an intern. I actually interned under Obama and like knew I didn't want to cover politics, but knew I wanted to cover social issues and like the human aspect of sports, but that really wasn't a thing for a really long time. And that's where I got confused is I knew I wanted to cover sports. I knew I wanted to cover social issues and the intersection of the two. And so that for me on my journey, it kind of made it a bumpy road. I interned with the Bucks and I went on and I actually covered hockey for a season, which was a really interesting experience. It was definitely a grind. And I would say it was a huge learning experience for me. So even if you want to end up in football, take anything that you can get because you're going to learn no matter what. And then as I grew and things changed, that path that I always had in my head of the intersection of sports and social issues, it was here and I was ready to go. And then that's how I ended up with Sports Illustrated. And that's how I ended up with this series. So.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Diandra. That was awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to, just a reminder also, our chat is open. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in there. For those of you who weren't present for our little housekeeping rules, we can see your questions in the chat. We might call on you to ask them in person. Well, over Zoom, but if that's something you're not comfortable with, just indicate no microphone or no mic in the chat as well. I'm going to continue with the intro. So I'm going to go next to Alexa. If you could tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name is Alexa Ross. I work in Rochester, New York. So very close to Ontario and very bummed that I can't come visit everybody and do this in person. But my current job is I'm a sports anchor and reporter at a local TV station, the CBS affiliate here in the city, and I have been covering the Buffalo Bills for the last 2 seasons. It's been a lot of fun. I'm sure not as fun as Diandra covering a Super Bowl this year, but we're getting there. We're getting close. But it's been very cool to be a part of an organization that has really tried to, gone from nothing to something and see how everybody has kind of taken this explosion of the Bills and how it's affected Western New York, as well as just everybody who's a part of it. The organization, it's full of a lot of great people. They do have a woman in charge there with the ownership, with Kim and Terry. So it's been really nice to see an organization that really values women in the field, just kind of all over the place, whether it's in coaching aspects, media, etc. But I've always wanted to work in football. My dad has been a Philadelphia Eagles season ticket holder since 1985. So I have been really in it my entire life, and they're not good. They were not good when I was growing up. Obviously, they made it to the Super Bowl, the 2005 Super Bowl in Jacksonville, but we all know what happened there. So, I had to watch a lot of football to learn the game and kind of understand what good football was. And that, it just kind of opened me up to covering college football. And I wouldn't be where I am without covering Division I mid-major football. I did 4 years of that, and it was great. I actually, if you guys are coming on later, Amina Solomon, she and I went to college together, and it was great. So definitely do everything you can. Take any opportunity you can get. I've done work with NBC Sports for the Olympics. I've worked at another smaller local station. I've been here about 2 years. So, the sky's the limit, and don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong, because you absolutely do.
Awesome. That's great advice. Thanks so much, Alexa. I'm sure that a lot of our participants today will take that in stride, hopefully, in their pursuit of their future careers. So then last but not least, we have Kimmy Chex. Same question for you as well. Just a quick intro of yourself and talk about how you got to the position where you are currently at today.
Amazing. All right. First of all, huge shout out to Olivia and Emily for putting this together. So honored to be here alongside Alexa and Diandra. Also, it's very, very, very rare that I'm on a Zoom with just women. So can we just give it up for ourselves, because we don't have to hang out with any men right now. It's incredible. My name is Kimmy Jackson. I am the honor host and personality for the NFL Network. I'm based here in Los Angeles, California. It's sunny and beautiful. I'm sorry, Alexa, I don't even know what the weather is in Ontario. I'm assuming it's maybe cold, but it's very, very hot today. So if you see me break a sweat, it's because I'm excited and I'm hot in Los Angeles. I joined the NFL back in 2018. So this was my third season with the league. I went to the NFL directly out of college. So when I was a senior in college, I joined the NFL as a part of the junior rotational program. So what that program is I'd always wanted to be an honor host and reporter. I studied broadcast journalism at the University of Iowa. That's where I worked for the football team. We have a huge D1 football program, Iowa Hawkeyes. So I covered football there and was our sole on-air host and reporter. And as I was trying to kind of navigate and figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, which I'm still trying to figure out to this day, I saw an opportunity pop up with the NFL called the Junior Rotational Program. So what that program is it's a 2-year program where every single 6 months you rotate departments across the league. So there are over 3,000 applicants, but only 7 of us are chosen each and every year. So it's a really, really, really small cohort. So right after graduating college, I moved to New York City, where we are based out of our league headquarters in New York. That's where commissioner sits and all of our executive vice presidents and senior leadership. And from there, I spent time in New York and the Los Angeles office. So every single 6 months, I rotated departments. I started in international media and business development. Again, I was a broadcast journalism major, not a business major. So it was completely retraining my brain and really figuring out how the league operates and kind of being on the monetary side of things, of understanding how we do data valuation models and how we leverage our rights in international markets, something completely different to my purview and kind of my interest in college. So I spent 6 months doing that. And then I rotated again in the New York office to the event revenue and strategy team. So if you think of NFL events, you think of Super Bowl, Pro Bowl, draft, NFL Combine, all of those very fun things. But my job was really to strategize and figure out the revenue side of things. So we have partners and we have sponsors, and figuring out how can we leverage that, right? If you think of Pro Bowl, for example, usually there's a big sponsor that sponsors the Pro Bowl. So it'd be the Pro Bowl presented by Verizon, for example. So my job was really trying to figure out, how do we actually leverage that? How do we monetize our events, right? How do we make money? We know that we make money from tickets, but if you have a non-ticketed event, how do we bring in revenue as a league? So after doing a year of those 2 rotations, I knew again that I wanted to be closer to the content side of things. So I begged and pleaded with HR, because as a part of the program, you have the opportunity to be in the New York office. You can go to Los Angeles, where our NFL Network offices and media offices are. You could go to New Jersey, where NFL Films are. You can go to London to be a part of our London team. You could go to DC to be a part of our legislative arm, or any of the 32 clubs. So you really kind of had a wide range of where do I want to go and what do I really want to learn. So I begged and pleaded with HR and said, please send me to Los Angeles for 6 months. I want to see the content side of things. New York was very, very, very business centric, suit and tie every day, very stuffy, still great, but very stuffy. That's not my style at all. So I finally went out to Los Angeles and did a 6-month rotation with our fantasy football department. And really try to figure out how we can revolutionize content within our fantasy football app. We know that there are so many fans in it, but we were kind of catching up and coming to speed with making sure that people were enticed and enthusiastic to go to our product. And then they also had a one-to-one experience with any of our NFL personalities. From there, it was kind of a serendipitous thing that had happened. A producer had decided to put me on one of our digital fantasy football shows just for a test run. I went on for 1 episode and I never came off. And then at the end of that season, the NFL wanted to keep me, even though I was still a JRP and had 6 months left in my 2-year rotation. They wanted to steal me away from the network offices. So I signed a contract last year, kind of exactly a year ago, I guess, to become our youngest on-air personality at the NFL Network and Media Group. So I was really excited. I was only 23 years old and like blown away that I had this opportunity, but that's kind of how I got here. So had an incredible experience in college. It went directly to the NFL in a very much business capacity, and then always kind of bet on myself and let people know from the jump what I wanted to be when I grew up and who I wanted to be, and that they could use and trust me. And that's where I am now.
Awesome. That's incredible. Thanks so much, Kimmy. Just another reminder, if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. I'm just going to ask one quick question to Alexa, just in case you do need to pop off. So what I would like to ask you is, what were some key points on your resume when you first started looking out for jobs in media and communications?
Well, when you're on air, everything comes down to your reel. Everyone wants to see your reel, but the thing that caught everyone's attention, so for a hiring manager who might not click the reel link on my resume, but might just be looking at what's listed, they saw the Olympics and they saw that I worked as a production assistant for NBC Sports. So that's, to this day, I mean, this happened in February 2018. So last Winter Olympics. We are now coming up on belated Summer Olympics, and people still ask me about it. I was asked about it going into this job and kind of the things I learned. And I think the thing that I learned in South Korea was that no matter what you do, everything is connected in this big wide world of sports. And it's really, it doesn't matter where you are. I had friends who had never been in a curling rink ever be assigned to the curling rink and fall in love with it and take it and use what they learned there to kind of do whatever they do. I was assigned to ice hockey, which is my other sport. Football is a lot higher than ice hockey, but I do have a big soft spot in my heart for ice hockey. And so that's where I was in the rink. I met every hockey commentator, between the NHL and NBC people to people who work for the CBC and all over the place. I mean, I backed into Kimmo Timonen and stepped on him and he said, haha, it's okay. And it was terrifying. It was, you can't be embarrassed when these things happen because it's how you make these connections. But it just really taught me not that I didn't know the value of hard work, but when you're working 16 hours a day in a tournament style sport, there's really not much you can do besides, keep your nose down and be ready for that game and know as much as you can. They utilize me for research, for content purposes. So I think that helps me when I come to develop stories, when I look into, storyboarding or pitching a different digital show or looking into the local teams here. We have a couple professional teams here besides the Bills in Buffalo. We have some local teams to Rochester, an AHL team, as well as a AAA minor league affiliate. So it's been a lot, I think that's my biggest thing. Also, I don't have to hop off. I'm not talking to Maya until 6:30. So after my show, I do have to go back to work at some point though, because I am anchoring our 6 p.m. show. But
that's perfect. Do you just want to share are you allowed to share with our audience what you might have made you hop off, like what you're about to do?
Yes. So if you guys know who Maya Chaka is, you might not know her name right now, but you will soon. You've probably seen her picture. She's the first Black woman who will be reffing in the NFL. She's from Rochester, and I am interviewing her tonight at 6:30. So I thought I was going to talk to, I'm so excited. I thought I was going to talk to her earlier, and I was a wreck. I called Emily hysterically crying because I didn't want to miss the panel. Because this, giving back and being a part of these conversations means a lot to me, but I'm really excited to talk to her and talk about what Rochester brought her and being in the Rochester City School District, how that kind of helped influence her love of sports, because it's something that Diandra also talked about, the intersection of sport and social issues. Rochester City School District is one of America's most underfunded public schools just in the country. So that school system, a lot of kids seek sports as a way to get out, and, escape, the situations that they feel they can fall into because of the systemic racism that we see in the city and beyond. So, talking to her just kind of about what sports gave her as she got older. She reffed high school sport. Now she's working with Sarah Thomas, who she actually worked in a rotational program with for a referee program. So I'm going to talk to her also about that. And I'm really excited about that one. I'll definitely share it, and you guys can take a read once I get done with that. But yeah, it's another great opportunity. We need to focus on the women in football, because what football is for everyone, as much as people don't want it to be, whether you're playing, whether you're coaching, whether you're reffing, whether you're on air, writing about it, anything, this is a space for everyone. So I think that we need to, continue to share these stories and keep pushing forward, just like what Diandra and Kimmi are doing. I think we're all doing a really important job right now in, of course, what we do is fun, but it's also so important.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And it's really nice to hear that you found ways to connect back to the Rochester area with what you're reporting. And then, of course, taking your experiences growing up with football and applying it to kind of your everyday life, and also getting that insight on the resume end of things, or I guess the real, because that's just as important or more important, if anything. So I'm going to
we're also on another Zoom right now because Micah Hyde just signed a contract extension. So I'm currently recording this Zoom to put in my 6 o'clock show. So
I went to college with Micah. He's amazing.
He's such a nice guy. He's one of my favorite people. He's one of my favorite people on that team. My favorite is Deion Dawkins because I went to college with him. So also, what's not fun about a left tackle? But
I don't know. This is so much fun hearing women talk about football, and it's just like the most engaging thing, especially when we've been pushing for us to be in this sphere for so long. So it's nice to have these combos, and throughout this panel and this weekend, we hope everyone else can feel engaged to it. I'm going to go to Diandra because I had a question on kind of that social issues side of things, or just social understanding of individuals just beyond the football face, right? There's more to that. Working with Sports Illustrated and just in general with your initiatives, what have been some things you've learned along the way to best bring out those stories and then leverage that for your own career and future opportunities?
Yeah, there's a lot. Actually, I think about this all the time. First of all, I interviewed a lot of coaches this year, and they want to tell their stories. So there's a need for this, there's a need for this type of storytelling. So usually once I start the interview, it's just like, some of them will last 45 minutes. I mean, there's a lot to tell. And up until recently, those stories really didn't get told. And so that is something that I realized is, one, people want to tell their stories. Two, especially specifically speaking on the women coaches, what they went through to get where they're at needs to be highlighted. So what I try to do with this series is really highlight the amount of work that it takes to get there. So you might see men on Twitter that are like, oh, well, you're just hiring her because she's a woman. No, I try really hard to highlight the work ethic, all the sacrifices that they had to make. Coach Loux with the Bucs was the first feature that I did for the series. And, she had the same profession for 25 years. She worked, I think it was 20 years. She worked in insurance and started playing football when she was 40, decided that was it. She didn't want to work in insurance anymore. She wanted to be a coach. And, the sacrifices that she made on behalf of her family and what she wanted to do and where it got her, that was the first feature that I did. For me personally, as a journalist, this is the most fulfilling. I love covering the game. I had so much fun covering the Bucs. They also have never been good, in years. So they're kind of similar to the Bills in that fact that even when they got Tom Brady, I was like, I don't know, it's the Bucs, you know? So it was really fun to cover them this year. It was fun to cover Tom Brady. It was fun to cover this defense, but then on this aspect of the game, it was really fulfilling for me as a journalist and just as a human being. And I am a journalist at heart, so telling these stories is really important, and it's authentic to just me, which I feel is so important when you're going to get into this business, because it's so competitive. You're going to get on social media, you're going to see everyone, and you're going to think, oh my God, I have to be this certain type, this certain mold. That is not true. Even if you look at us on the panel, like, we couldn't beat each other if we tried, and we each have our own lane, and they're totally different. And so for me, yeah, it's just being myself. And I finally found like that path, and I have my lane. So it's been a great season for sure.
So I'm just going to keep building off of that, and I'll direct it to Kimmy, and then of course you can comment too, because it's just feeding off of what you had just said.
And Kimmy covers stories like this too. Like we both love that aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I follow you both on Twitter, so I see the engagement that you have on both sides of things. So I'm genuinely curious to hear, and it was also a comment that we saw from Meg in the chat. For example, starting with Kimmy, do you find that you are always in a spot where you have to prove yourself a bit more to make sure that you're recognized as being kind of one of the top faces on like the NFL Network, for example, and with NFL media?
I think it honestly kind of depends on like what the content is, right? So during the season, I mostly cover fantasy football. And if you ladies play fantasy football, you know, people are very, very passionate about it, right? The number one thing that you care about each and every week is, did your own NFL team win a game? And then the second thing that you care about the most is, how did you do in fantasy, right? Like, did you win? Did you lose? Did you beat your uncle? Did you beat your dad? Did you beat your boyfriend? Whatever it may be. So in my fantasy role, it's incredibly technical, right? The things that I talk about every single day when giving advice for people about lineups or matchups or whatever it may be are really looking at stats and looking at matchups and looking at numbers and all of those crazy things. So I feel like that's when I feel like I need to be extra on top of everything, right? And I sit down with our research team and I really grind like day in and day out to make sure that I am fully aware of every single piece of information that I'm getting out there. Because what we also know is that people look for mistakes, and people like to call you out on your mistakes, because that's just a part of being a woman in football. The same mansplaining that happens to all of us, because we all said 100% of us deal with it. There are times where if I say he rushed for 382 yards in a 6-game stretch and it was 387 yards, someone will find a reason to call me out on it. And I hate that, because it's a difference of 5 yards, right? We know that doesn't really mean anything, but I always feel like I have to be incredibly on top of everything that I do, because the fantasy football community is so incredibly passionate and they pay attention to every single detail. However, when I take off that fantasy lens and I just do interviews with our players, our coaches, or people across the league, that's when I feel like I don't really need to prep. I just need to be myself, right? I know the top line information, like when the guy was drafted, what teams he's played for, you know, the major stats that are associated with his position and how he's performed. But the biggest thing that I've learned is that I don't feel like I need to prove anything when I'm being myself, right? That's the reason I got this job. And that's kind of a thing that I reaffirm to myself daily, because I think we all probably struggle with the imposter syndrome. And especially when you're young and you're on a national scale, that kind of self-doubt talk eats at you, right? And you start to question things like, do I deserve it? Am I worthy of this? All of that nonsense that we completely need to push to the side. And I remind myself, like, I wouldn't have the job and the position I have if I wasn't great at it. Right? There are days when I can feel like shit, right? And we probably all have those days. And even in the pandemic, I always joked with my fiance, it's like, I can't not show up to work, right? I can't decide to join a Zoom call with my camera off, because my job is joining with my camera on, full face of hair and makeup and being that fun, energetic personality, right? So there are days where it kind of ebbs and flows, but at the end of the day, I am unapologetically myself in every single room I enter. And that's the reason I have my job. And I like to think that's the reason why people like me in my job, inclusive of our players, inclusive of people at the NFL, inclusive of coaching staffs across the league, because I bring my authentic self in every single room. And I feel like I don't need to prove who I am, because I am who I am, and they're going to like it. And if they don't like it, it sucks for them.
Yeah, I feel like every woman here can totally resonate with what you just said. all of us, although we have all of our own insecurities, we need to just learn that being unapologetically yourself is so important in terms of confidence, in terms of just trying to prove yourself.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
What you just said, Emily. The other thing that I've realized, especially on the media side of things, and I think this is true anywhere you go, people can sniff out the bullshit, right? Like after a while, if you're not unapologetically you, if you're trying to put on this constant facade, like there's going to be a moment where you slip. And if you don't find a moment where you slip, you're constantly going to be trying to be this person that you're not. And I think that's the number one thing, right? Selling people on who you are is incredibly important to having success, especially in this field, because people are drawn to personalities. People are drawn to hot takes. People are drawn to the certain things that only you can give. I can only give me. Diandra can only give herself. Alexa can only give herself, right? That's why, you know, when you put women in a room, especially in the media and entertainment side of things, you would think that it's an incredibly volatile situation because we're all gunning for that next position. We're all gunning to have, you know, this large scale, you know, I don't even know if it's fame, but just this large scale impact on the sport. The thing is, we can all only do it in our own specific ways. That's why I don't even believe in the concept of competition as a woman in football, because what I bring to the table is so incredibly different from Diandra and vice versa. So really just kind of like always center yourself and know you have to be unapologetically you. One, because you owe it to yourself to be who you are. And two, because people are going to be able to sniff it out. And then three, people want authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was wonderfully put. And I think that's something that OIFA is like really like, that's something that we are trying to embody as a league, is just lifting up other women in football, because we are such a not niche population, but we're just our own little group within this industry, just trying to make it. And the only way that we can do that is by supporting each other. So that was excellent. Very inspiring for me personally. Diandra, I would like if you have any follow-up to that same question, just about the level of research that you need to do or you feel you need to do for your role. Alexa just did have to dip out really quickly because she did have to do that really cool interview. So now it's just the four of us. So yeah, Diandra, if you would like to just speak to Kimmy's point.
Yeah, it's going to be really similar to that. It's true with when you're covering multiple things, it depends on the content. So like, obviously you're going to have your comfort level. For me, I'm the same way. Interviews are very natural to me because you keep up with it every single day anyway. So you know the players, you know their stories, all of that. When you're covering stats or, you know, like just for an example, like for the Super Bowl, you know, when I'm talking about Kansas City, well, I cover the Bucs. So that was a lot of research, and I wanted to know my shit. Like I had to know, you know, everything. And so, yeah, it took a lot more research. As far as authenticity goes, I am like snaps on that. First of all, first thing is it's much easier to just be yourself. Right. And so the thing with this industry is too, as you're applying for jobs and you're going to get a million no's, you're going to get a bunch of detours. And it's easier when you just know, listen, I myself 100%, if these people didn't want me, it wasn't going to work out anyways. This is who I am. And you know, I guess I kind of had to learn that just as women getting into a field that is, my dog was about to bark too. So whoever that was.
I'm on mute. They've heard something. They're activated.
My dog was just rolling around and I'm like, please don't do it now. But yeah, so like authenticity, like this is a male dominated industry. And obviously women, like we're coming up and we're making ourselves known. However, it still is male dominated, right? So be yourself. That is a value. Now is the time, really, because I feel personally, I feel like this industry needs women. They need their voices, their stories, all of it. So it's really an asset. I view myself as an asset to this industry, not as like, I don't know, like a distraction or anything like that. Like what I have to say is beneficial. And if you just keep that in your head, it helps so much. And yeah, I mean, when you get no's, if I get a no, I'm like, well, I probably wouldn't even have liked working for these people anyway. So move along, you know, because it just wouldn't have worked out. So authenticity is everything.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good point. Don't let those no's shut you down. Keep going. Because honestly, I've heard like when a no comes, another door opens. So really, it just keeps you going for the next goal. So I want to actually engage the audience a bit because we have some great questions pouring in. From earlier, just hearing your experiences, we're seeing that you both are very much voices for football and like a face of it. But what about thinking about it as from an athlete end? So I'm going to let Esther, if you're still here with us, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question. If you're uncomfortable, we can do it for you. But go ahead, ask your question.
Hi everybody. So I'm Esther. I'm from Brazil actually, so it's pretty cool to be here with y'all. So my question was, when you were learning and watching football growing up as a girl, did you guys want to play football? How was that for you?
I can take this one first. I don't think I was like super into playing football itself. I loved it, and I think I could dominate it with it because I have an attitude, and I'm like, I could go out and just fuck everybody up on flag football. But for me, it was more so like I just love the intricacies of like learning the game itself. So even now, like I think it would be so fun to join like a co-ed flag football team out here in LA. Kind of have that camaraderie with friends. But my passion was way more so like actually studying the game and studying the players and having kind of a fan affinity for the league itself and knowing how it operates rather than the technical things. However, I do think there are times where it's a lot harder for me to grasp certain concepts because I didn't actually play the game. So when my male counterparts, for example, are saying, oh, that time when I was a corner and I did X and Y and Z coverage, like sometimes it's harder for me to relate to that because watching a game on screen, no matter how much you break down film, it's incredibly different from playing it yourself. So I think women who do play the sport have kind of a leg up on everyone else. So to all of our incredible football athletes out there, go be badass because you guys have a knowledge that I don't have. And I think it could be incredibly beneficial down the line.
And I'm just thinking if I were applying for something right now and being able to say that I've played the game, that could be such a cool leg up in a resume end of things, especially when applying. And yeah, I'm going to turn the question to Diandra too. Have you considered playing as well?
Yeah, so I was a gymnast growing up, but I was into everything. So I feel like now you would look at me and be like, there is no way this girl played football, but I did all the time. I used to always play with my brother and his friends. I used to beg them to play with me. We used to have flag football games in high school and they used to call me Randy Moss. And so like, I will keep that forever. But yeah, no, I've always loved the game. I grew up watching it. But then as I got older, same thing. I just love to study the game. I love the league. And now I'm starting to work with the league a lot. And I'm so fascinated by how it runs. Like every aspect of it is amazing. So very similar. I think it would be so cool to see women who have played the game for years go on and be journalists and analysts and break the game down because you'd have a totally different perspective on everything than I would.
Our girls who are here from our league are probably loving hearing that. So
it's like a dream. Like when I think about that now and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be, I'll be in my 40s and I'm like looking back and like, wow, this is so cool. She's an analyst and played the game and worked her way up and it was totally accepted and normalized and everything. That would be amazing. Do it.
Do that every day. I'm going to let Meg Walsh, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question now.
Oh, you actually kind of hit on it earlier, which is, and you guys answered just so amazing. And yeah, it was more just about the level of knowledge that you needed. But yeah, you guys hit the nail kind of right on the head with it earlier. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for commenting. That's the beauty of being able to meet yourself and ask questions directly. I saw another. Oh, it already looks like Olivia Gordon and Kimmi are talking about football here, so we're already seeing the knowledge come through. Okay, Emily, you're welcome to go back and continue asking questions.
Yeah, perfect. This one can go for either one, well, both of you actually. So what kind of current issues and trends in the field in terms of like media trends, football trends, should people like us in this panel right now be aware of?
I can take this one first. if you don't mind, Diandra. I think a huge thing that I've told people this last season, and now that we're hitting 1 year of COVID-19 in the United States and kind of being on full lockdown, I've had a lot of students and people trying to break into kind of the media side of the business be devastated because they're like, I can't get interviews, I'm not allowed to cover games, I can't do these things. And my biggest advice is like, now is the time to pivot, because we have these smartphones, we have our webcams, we have all of this access at our fingertips. So my biggest thing is like, now is the time for you to create your own content in your own unique way, right? You don't necessarily need a press media pass to cover a game anymore, right? You understand that the games are on TV, or you can find the highlights, or you can find the stat lines on ESPN, or whoever is breaking down the stats from whatever sport you're covering. And now is the time for you to like really play around and kind of find your own niche, right? Because if you think of students covering things for their college newspaper or their college magazine or their college television station, that's where you kind of are in like a very cut and dry box, right? Where you give your intro, you have your interview, you kind of wrap it up and put a bow on it, and that's what it is. Now you can completely like break that notion of that kind of traditional interview or traditional content and really make something that's unique to you. Also, understanding social media is huge, right? And this is like one huge piece of advice that I got really early on that I think still stands. Utilizing social media to your advantage, right? Sadly, as women, we understand the double standards, right? We can shake our heads. We understand that there are double standards. There are things that men can do that women can't do. There are things that white women can do that women of color cannot do. And that's something that we have to be very, very understanding and cognizant of. So when using social media, and let me rewind, when applying for a job and your social media is on your resume, you can't doubt that employers, especially NFL clubs and NFL teams and the league itself, they're going to find you and try to seek you out. So what are you portraying on social media? Sadly, as much as I want to like post a really cute picture on vacation in a bikini, I understand that that would be misperceived. Understanding that that is a completely fucked up backwards notion, right? But I have to be so extra cognizant. Oh, they're activated again. They understand that it's fucked up that we can't post cute pictures. I have to be so extra cognizant of the brand that I'm portraying. So a good practice that I would look at, especially in terms of, Twitter somewhat, right? Of like, you should be PC and not, tweet out crazy things, but more so on Instagram of look at your feed or send your feed to a friend on here, anybody. And in looking at it, say, what are 3 adjectives you take away from looking at my social media? Right. And then kind of change that lens from a professional standpoint. If it's pictures of you and your friends going out and partying, then people say you're fun, you're adventurous, you're whatever. But do you want people to automatically associate you with football? Do you want people to automatically associate you with being a journalist? Do you want people to automatically associate you in a professional sense? So that's kind of a trend per se that I think, hey, can you be quiet, Jackson? I'm trying to speak. I have 2 puppies. They're crazy. So I think that's kind of a trend to beware of like, go to some of your favorite journalists' social medias. And I know everybody kind of has different rules with this, but really start to monitor how they post and how they kind of build themselves as a brand, because now as content creators, you really are a brand yourself. And even though, Diandra, for example, works for Sports Illustrated, she covered the book. So when people look at her, they automatically associate her with the Buccaneers franchise. So would the Buccaneers be comfortable having a reporter who covered their team portraying X, Y, and Z behaviors on social media? So that's just kind of a quick rule of thumb that I was told in college that I really took to heart. And it was hard to, archive and delete some photos of my fun college days, but I really did see that kind of pay off. And there are still women who are trying to break into the field that, conversations have happened where they work at the NFL and they want to go on the on-air side of things, but other people have said, hey, you have to clean up your social media. You have to be cognizant of all these other factors that go into you getting a job. You can't necessarily just be good at your job and have a good resume anymore. You kind of have to bring the brand with yourself.
Oh, that hits so nicely. And I want Diandra to comment because I was going to make an analogy about dating, because that's exactly what I think of. You do a bit of creeping, you snoop behind the scenes. People are naturally going to do that when they're trying to hire someone, right? So yeah, Diandra, go ahead.
It's so true. I think there was a point in my career where I switched from a personal social media to a brand where you just, I will post videos of my dog, but like, if it's not related to football, I'm probably not going to post it, but it helps elevate your work and your content because people automatically associate you with whatever you're covering. So social media is huge, not to go on a tangent, but like kind of just piggybacking off what she said. So we are sitting in our houses. We all have iPhones. Get a ring light, create content. You can create your own graphic, whatever you want to. Get on Canva, create a graphic, put it up there, make it your own, and start putting your work on your social media. Do the right hashtags and people will see your work. Like people, you have no idea who you're reaching. But I think like Canva, a ring light, a cell phone, and then everything is digital now. Like there's so many digital platforms where, yeah, you might not get paid. You're in college and you might not get paid to write for them, but I promise you it's going to pay off. Write, find one of these digital platforms, look up who the editor is, email the editor and say, listen, this is what I want to do. Here's a video. Here's a writing sample. You know, I don't have much, but I want to get started, and just do it. Because when I covered the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that's kind of how I got experience, because that's where I could get in. And I sent them old writing samples and a video that I did like outside of a building. And I was like, listen, I can talk on camera. I can write. It's not much, but here it is. And I ended up getting a gig covering the Lightning, and they went to the Stanley Cup finals. So you just really never know. But yeah, I mean, if you're sitting here, create a little graphic. If you're doing nothing tonight, maybe I'm a loser because I'm like working. But literally, if you're sitting on your couch doing nothing, download Canva, create a little graphic, and just start filming yourself. Even if you don't post it right away, definitely do that. Do like a women in sports hashtag, and people will see what you're doing. It's an investment.
One quick thing kind of popping off that is like, a girl who I know who wants to be on air, she started doing a Women's History Month feature where every single month during the month of March, she highlights a different woman in the world of sports. And it's one of those things where the only reason I found her is because she featured a friend of mine. So then the friend of mine who was tagged posted it on her story. So then of course I clicked into it because I want to support other women. And then I saw all the other women that she followed. And then I saw that she did a post on Jamel Hill, and Jamel Hill is a really good friend of mine. So then I said, oh, maybe if I tag Jamel, then Jamel will see it. And that's kind of how it worked. And then it was like a whole trickle down effect. So just be really intentional and kind of smart about the different ways that you can bring up content and bring other people into the fold. And, you know, if it's a Women's History Month feature, or if it's just like 5 badass female football players that I want to highlight, like once you start identifying those other people and tagging and associating them with yourself, there's higher likelihood and chances that more people get eyes on it. And you just skyrocket off.
It's so true. And like, I feel like all of us on here are like-minded, right? Or else we wouldn't be on this panel. So we're looking for people like this to follow. And so I'm always looking for people to follow that I like their content. I relate to it. They're covering cool stories. So like we're all out here looking for people like you to follow. So you just never know who you're reaching when you post these videos.
Yeah, I mean, amazing answers from you both. I think it's super interesting to touch on the social media double standard that women have to face. I think like myself and a lot of the OIFA athletes and executive members, we all grew up in a time where everyone was like, hide your social media. You won't get a job if someone finds your social media. But to use Kimmy's word earlier, we're now like pivoting to a time where we can use that to our advantage. So it's really interesting to hear both of your takes on how exactly to do that. Like that was great advice, Kimmy, that you sort of started off with, that you got in college to turn your social media into a brand. And Diandra, you did the exact same thing. So that's super cool. I'm going to.
I didn't want to say it, and once I said it, I don't want to say it in the thing of like you can't have a personality, because I like pulled up my own.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still have a personality, and will like post a picture of my dogs or post a picture of me and my fiance, because people are still drawn to that uniqueness that is you. But there's certain things that you have to be cognizant of like, I'm gonna weigh the pros and the cons. And if you even have a moment or a thought of like, would this be controversial or could this be misconstrued? If you even have that thought, then it's like, no, I'm just going to keep it for myself, right? I'm just going to look at a cute folder that says wanted to post to Instagram, but I couldn't. And you can just go through every week and like, look at how cute you are and just keep it pushing. So please don't feel as if you have to be like this, like PC, professional robot all the time. Still have a personality, because that's the thing where you see engagement and people wanting to engage with you in a way outside of sports, of understanding and liking who you are as a person, but understanding the confines that there is a double standard, and you never want that to be misconstrued.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Diandra, do you have anything else to say to that? Or
I was going to add to it, and I don't remember because I got really into her answer. But yeah, I'm sure I'll think about it in a little bit, and then I'll raise my hand. I'll let you guys know.
No, that's all good. So one other thing that we've been meaning to ask is about work-life balance in the field. That is something that is typically an issue that women in general are facing. But how do you find it being in the football industry and in the media journalism industry as well?
I guess I'll take this one because I'm actually going through it right now. So like in the season, I felt like I had my head down and I was just doing the work every single day. And I went into it knowing that I know, like, during the season, first of all, we're in a pandemic. So it's like, what am I really going to do? Besides, like, obviously I can check out and chill in my house and do my thing. But during the season, I was really busy and I was just in go mode. I had my head down and I was doing the work. What happened was when the season ended, and we just kept going. So like we played Washington in the first round of the playoffs, and it was a close game. And I was like, in my head, I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, my season might be over and I might have so much time on my hands. Well, that did not happen. And so it just kept going and going. And then the Super Bowl is in Tampa. We went to the Super Bowl. So it was like my work doubled and tripled. And I was doing work for the NFL that week. That it happened really, really quick, and I had to be ready to go. So then when the season ended, I had nothing. I was like, what am I doing? I didn't even know what to do with myself because I hadn't really taken that time to balance my work and my life. For me, I get stressed. I get irritable. I know when it's time to check out. And so it really is like, for me, I know my yoga practice is really important. So I have to make time to work out in some way or do my yoga. Walking my dog, he's crazy. Like, he's being really good right now, but he has to walk like 3 miles a day or else he just stares at me or does something that's not good. So walking my dog is a way that I check out. Like, I don't look at my phone, and it really has to be intentional for me. I think like I really have to be intentional with it. I have to give myself rules and say, this is when you are not looking at your Twitter. I log out of Twitter during the season. I've tried to log out of Twitter and I really can't, because then somebody sends me something. But logging out of social media and really checking out for a little bit is so good for your mental health. And I make a point to do that as much as I can. If there's no reason for me to be on it, I'm not scrolling, period. So it just, you just have to be really intentional with it. Even if you feel like you're missing something. I mean, right now it's the off season. I'm not missing much, so my mental health is like my number one. I hope that answered. It's just really like intentionally, like, even if you have to write things down or you have to tell somebody to hold you accountable, like, this is when I am not working. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice too, for those of us who maybe have issues with that. I know myself, social media, man, if I delete that, I always get anxious about like new messages popping up all the time. So that's really good advice. And it's good to know that other people are also struggling with that.
Even if you really like, if you have stuff going on and it really does stress you, if it makes you more anxious to be out of it, set it so that if someone messages you, you're going to get an email, you know what I'm saying? But just log out of your account, because you'll notice, like, I notice I'm just getting on scrolling. I'm like, what am I doing? I literally don't care what anyone is talking about right now. Just, it's not good. It's not beneficial.
Yeah, no, that's excellent advice. Kimmy, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, so I am a huge believer in work-life balance. And I think at the start of my career, definitely when I was in my business roles at the NFL, I felt like I was so much more glued to my job because I was in something completely foreign to me, right? And I wanted to like really execute and show up and perform every single day. So there were days where I'd be in the office for like 12 hours a day and then like have to remind myself to like go home and get the rest and do it again the next day. But now definitely on this on-air side of things, I just am honest with people of like, this is too much. Like this season, I was on air 6 days a week, 2 to 3 shows a day. And it was fun and it was incredible, but it took such a toll on my own mental health and my own well-being that now I have a rule of like, I don't have my work email on my personal phone. I do not answer emails after 6 o'clock. And I saw someone posted this on social media and I thought it was great. And I like 100% want to steal from it. But at the end of their email signature, they said, I understand that my working hours may not reflect your working hours. So if you get this email and it's not the time, that you're available to respond, that's okay. And that's something that I have to kind of remind myself and be mindful of, because I think we're constantly in this rat race of like, go, 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 go. And we've been preached for so long that you have to have another job and you have to have a side hustle and you have to make money on the side and you have to do all these things. But we've not been told that like, it's okay to take a break and it's okay to prioritize yourself. So I'm very, very honest with people of like, even now, like I'm trying to do this thing where I say no. And especially in the off season, you get so many asks to do certain things and hop on this podcast or do this, that, and the other. And though I would want to give myself to so many people all the time, I have to be mindful that like, I don't have it within me to do it because I just worked my ass off for 7 months straight, 6 days a week without taking a break. So now it's my time to say no. And I think you can be really intentional and really kind in the way that you go about it. And I'm also honest with people. Like a lot of people hit me up right before Super Bowl, like, hey, now that the season ended, can we chat? And I was honest and was like, the season hasn't ended for me. And I have, my sights set on a virtual Pro Bowl and a Super Bowl. So I'd appreciate, if you give me some leniency to get back to you and we talk later on in the season come March or April. And then I'll get to, whatever you want to do. So just kind of set those parameters and those boundaries, because I think it's really easy to get locked into a really toxic cycle of just go, 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 go. And your work output suffers from that. So you have to prioritize yourself and find the little things that make you happy. Like Diandra said, it's her yoga practice and going on a 3-mile walk with her dog and getting off social media. And for me, it's like watching trash reality television for an hour and like getting my complete escape, or go hanging out with my fiance and like really solidifying, our relationship and the things that make us happy, because we are human beings first. We are ourselves, not our jobs. And that's something that we constantly have to remind ourselves of.
Also, just to add to that, like, it's so important to value self-worth is so important in this job too, because it's so easy to put your job over you as a human being. And so same, like when the Super Bowl was over, granted, like I was living in the Super Bowl too before the Super Bowl was even happening, because Tampa was just like crazy madness. And 2 days after the Super Bowl ended, I'm getting pitches for stories. And I'm like, I have not even had 48 hours of sleep, and I had to turn down so much. I still haven't even taken on a story because I'm just not there yet. And it really is like knowing your worth and creating boundaries and setting boundaries and not feeling bad when you set the boundaries. Like you can't feel guilty because you're taking care of yourself first. So boundaries and self-worth are very important, I think, in order to be successful, because your work is not going to be as good.
Yeah, I totally agree. We love being able to set boundaries. I think that I agree. That's something that's very, very important. I'm also loving the chat right now. Everyone's talking about their own work-life balance. So that's pretty cool. So unfortunately, we're kind of coming to the end of our panel. So I just want to say, before I ask this last question, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We love all of your participation through the chat, through those of you who have asked questions. It's been great. And thank you so much to Diandra and Kimmi for showing up and being here today. We encourage all of you guys to follow them on Twitter. Check out Kimmi was sending some of the opportunities in the NFL currently in the chat. So check some of those out as well. But I feel like I have to end on this one because we do have a lot of young athletes and women who want to enter the football industry. So both of you, I'll go to Diandra first. what advice would you give to your younger self or to one of us attendees of the event? Would you give to get into the football field? So what advice would you give to someone wanting to enter?
Maybe not even just specific to football, but I would say like, don't question like who you are. Don't question your goals or your dreams, because you're going to come across a lot of people that think your dreams are absolutely insane. But I've had the same dream since I was a little girl. And so it's who I am, and that's it. But yeah, like, don't question your worth. Don't question your motives, your dreams, and just keep going. A lot of people are going to project insecurities onto you. And I've noticed that is, I don't know how I'm just now mentioning this in this panel, because that was a big part of what I had to learn is people get intimidated by women who are confident and women who have dreams and they're set on them. And you're going to come across a lot of people that are going to project their own insecurities onto you, but you have to know that that is more them. It's not you. So do that. Getting into football, you got to start somewhere. So my advice really, if you want to just get started, is don't be picky. Like, you're not going to get in where you want right away. And I remember in college, like, people would say, you have to work in local news, you have to do this. That is not true. There are so many opportunities now, especially everything is digital, right? So like, you can literally get an opportunity anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, on a digital platform, email them and just start. You have to start, and you can't really be picky in the beginning. So I would say, like, as far as content goes, if you want to get your foot in the door in football, even if it's a blog, just start writing, just start filming yourself, and just go.
Yes to all of that. Everything she said. I think the biggest kind of piece of advice is like, really be patient with yourself and understanding that we work in an industry where our job is the most sought after thing in the world, right? Everybody wants to be in sports and entertainment. Everybody wants to have especially a piece of football and the NFL itself, because that is the antithesis of American culture and just kind of sports across the entire world, right? So that means that there are thousands of people every single day vying for the exact same opportunity. And those no's can be really, 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 really tough and really defeating at times, but you have to be patient and again, consistently bet on yourself. And that's why, like Diandra said, everything is digital. Start making your own content, start kind of having all of these things in your own back pocket that differentiate yourself from all the other people who are applying for these roles and positions, because the right thing will open up at the right time. And every single no brings you way closer to a yes. And I used to hate hearing that because I thought it was so dumb and so cliche, but it's right. There are opportunities that said no to me and I said no to. And had I taken those opportunities, my career would be on a completely different trajectory. And it's just so incredibly important to stay true to who you are and be really intentional about the roles that you do take, but also be incredibly patient and know that, you know, your career is going to have peaks and valleys, and it's not a one clear path to get to where you are. There's going to be opportunities that completely derail you and take you a whole other different direction. But that's so incredibly pivotal to your own self and also your professional career, because you learn so much from it. So be patient, continue to bet on yourself, and continue to refine and differentiate yourself from everyone else, because there's only one you, and people are going to know that and be cognizant of that. And when they hire you, they're going to want that one unapologetic you.